Hello. How you doing? Very quick video today. I'm currently set up for a shoot here in New York, and I wanted to quickly share some reflections on cinematography and traveling with gear. This is kind of more so related to, as a cinematographer, trying to make the most of the least, if that makes sense. The old me, when I used to travel, and generally when I'm filming, but also when I used to travel especially, would try to bring as much gear as possible, would try to bring as many lights as possible in order to try and shape the image that I want using all the gear that I have. And to be honest with you, having traveled all over the country for years now and just continuously trying to find the best way to bring all my gear with me, or as much of my gear as possible, I've kind of come to realize that what I should rather be thinking about is figuring out how to make the image I want with the least amount of gear possible. I think that's what makes a good cinematographer, trying to get the best shot that you can get with minimal gear, or rather with the right gear. So right now, this setup that I've got, I'm here to film an interview, but the subject is coming in a few minutes, so I thought I'd just quickly share these reflections and make use of this space. So right now I've only brought two lights with me. The first is my Falcon Eyes RX T18, I think it's called. I'll put the name here. This is a phenomenal light. I used to use it as a backlight, but now I've started to use it for interview shots and A-cam interviews. Incredibly powerful, incredibly lightweight. It's essentially a light mat that you can kind of set up. So it's very light to travel with. It doesn't require a massive softbox. And I think more importantly, what this light does is really focuses the light on the subject. Before, my kind of thinking was, let me try and get the biggest softbox possible to kind of imitate light coming in, natural light coming in from the window. But I think now I'm leaning more into trying to get my light very focused on where I want it focused. Here, in this case, in an interview, being the subject's face. So I've set up my Falcon Eyes on my right, on your left, and that is essentially my key light. What I've also done is I've got an Amaran 200X, and usually with a kind of rim light, the ideal situation would be to have a C-stand and have some sort of light kind of over me this way, and to put some, nice glimmer on my shoulder and also separate me from the background. Hey, how you doing? You okay? You downstairs? Give me a sec. One second. I'm gonna ask you so what I do now is I have the Amaran 200X, and then what I typically do is put it on a light stand and shine it at the ceiling and bounce that light from the ceiling down onto my shoulder, and that gives me the backlight that I need. These are just the two lights that I travel with. For God's sake. These are just the two lights that I travel with. The Amaran can fit in my camera bag, my carry-on bag, with which I have my camera inside. I can kind of squeeze it in there just about. And what I do is I have the RX TV 18D, whatever it's called, the Falcon Eyes. I put that in its own bag, and I have two check-in bags with Delta, so I just have that as one check-in bag. And then what I also do is, to make sure that there's contrast on my face, is grab a reflector which has a negative fill on it, and that can also kind of squeeze into my carry-on bag, and I put it on my left side, your right, to give me that contrast on my face. And then when it comes to light stand, I found these really very lightweight light stands, no pun intended, and they fold up really well. I'll share the image here and leave a link below. Those two light stands, they can kind of squeeze into a second check-in bag. What I did this time was I had like a light stand bag within which I threw these two things, but the main thing is they're very light. They're a bit flimsy, but they're good enough to hold my reflector and also hold my Amaran 200X. And then I have this other light stand, which is a newer light stand, which is light, also very sturdy. It's not usually what I'd use for a key light when I'm filming in and around Michigan. But when I'm traveling, it's kind of light enough to pack, but also sturdy enough to hold the Falcon Eyes, and it works perfectly fine. And then what I do is I have a two camera setup, so I kind of squeeze my Blackmagic 6K and 4K into my camera case bag with the two lenses that I'm using, which in this case are the Blazer Anamorphics 35 and 100. I have my 6K rigged out completely, the battery, the monitor, all that stuff. The 4K, as I'm using it as a B cam, I have it very not stripped down. I have it very stripped down. Even SSD drive is kind of just hanging out there. I have a lightweight tripod which I travel with, and I put that lightweight tripod in the light stand bag, and I have my main Manfrotto tripod for the A-cam. So this is essentially how I'm going to travel herein for interviews, and I think it's the perfect setup. The last element is always going to be the space that you're filming in. I think daylight is very important, because daylight is what gives you that extra backlight in a room like this. As you can see, if this room was completely blocked off and there was no light coming in, it would be essentially a very dark room, and I would not have the necessary lighting to light it up as much as I want. Depending on, of course, the kind of look I'm going for. But typically for interviews, you want it to be quite bright, and generally filming, you want it to be quite bright. So what I did this trip was, here in New York, I rented this space, which is a wonderful space. You have light right now shining from these windows, which are backlighting me and also lighting up this whole room. So I have my key light on my face, I have this as a backlight, and I have the sun, God's sun, as a backlight as well. And yeah, this is pretty much, I'm quite happy with this image. And I think also it speaks to being a cinematographer and a DP, trying to get the best image possible with the least amount, but the correct gear, the correct lighting, and I think the least amount of lights possible. I think that's a great way to kind of excel in your craft, because you're using what you have access to, your hands are kind of tied, and you're using that to try and get the best image possible. And I think that's what makes a great DP. It's being able to work with that, and that will just continuously help you improve your craft, trying to get the best image possible with the least amount of light possible, and using kind of what you have. If I'm traveling, if I'm flying out from Detroit to New York, for example, or wherever else, or halfway across the world, there's only so much I can pack. My bag can only carry so much, and I've learned that the hard way. I don't want to be carrying a million bags. I want to make sure that I can travel while sane and while not breaking my back, but at the same time having enough to get the image that I want. So yeah, those are just some reflections. Thank you for watching. See you next week. Goodbye. Don't do that, it's not good.